Thank you very much. Roll call of members.
Rich John. Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Present.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Dave McKenna.
Here.
Glenn Morey.
Here.
Martha Robertson. Here. Les Show. Here. Mike Sigler.
Here.
Donna Glad.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Henry Grandison.
Here.
Leslyn McBean Claiborne.
Present.
13 members present.
Thank you very much. One quick request from our sound booth is that we all please be mindful to speak directly into our microphones, not too loud, not too soft. You know, things are a little muffled, and people tend to try to speak up really loud, but that makes it even more muffly. So we're asking that you reel head on directly into the microphone. So last month, I appointed a small special committee to, pardon?
You're echoing.
Amy said turn off the thing.
I get the right price.
Oh, I thought that was my Wizard of Oz moment. Phew, I got all excited, like, yay. All right. To work to come up with a process for the legislature and how we handle the recovery fund. So thanks to Leslie Schill, Rich John, and Mike Sigler for putting in some time very quickly and working on a process. All of us received from that small committee proposal that included various parts. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about that, see what are the things that we can accept and how we can move this process forward. So thanks again, Leslie, Rich, and Mike for your work on this. Mike Lane.
I saw it online. Are there paper copies you can look at today?
Anybody else needs a paper copy? Are there a few hands up, Brittany? Thank you. So I wanted, I had a chance to talk with the committee a little bit, just to, get a sense of how they worked and, how decision-making happened and so on and so forth. And they worked really well together. So, again, much appreciated, and we want to encourage that. So thank you all for setting an example of working well together for all of us. So let's look at this proposal that came before us. And what I want to do is I think that there are potentially places that we can agree on. Okay, so this proposal had various sections. And the main charge of the committee was about the fund process. And I'm hoping that we can start there, look at the process that was proposed, and see if we can agree that that's a good process, or if we have some tweaks to it. Everybody has a copy now? So on the first page of this Tompkins County Recovery Fund proposal, you go down to the next bolded part, it says proposed fund process, which for me was really well thought out in terms of the roles for administration, the roles for staff, roles for legislature, in this recovery fund, which is what we're calling it, clear and successful implementation of the fund. So did anybody have any concerns about this proposed fund process? The administration role, staff role and the legislature role. I see Amanda and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One question was that Planning and Sustainability Department was identified to sort of lead the staff role. And I assume, but I wanted to ask that they were consulted on that. And do they want to take on another big thing like this? And I see Katie just jumped on.
All right,
Hi,
I don't know-
Amanda.
So
Leslie,
thank you
did
for
you
your
want me to
question,
answer
Amanda.
now? Sorry.
Katie, hang on a minute. Thank you for your question, Amanda. It wasn't on the committee to consult with staff. It was for them to bring a proposed process before us. And if this legislature felt that this is the direction we wanted to go in, but they also consulted with administration, then we go to staff and say, hey, is this something you want to take on, or do you have a different idea of how we can go about doing this? So, right, that was the idea behind it. So yes, planning was a thought. It could have been community foundation or, wherever. But I think the committee felt that this is something we should keep in-house.
Okay.
So, on that note, I'm more than happy to hear from Katie. And then I have Mike Lane and Leslie Show. Martha, sorry. Mike Lane, Martha Robertson, and Leslie Show. Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so Leslyn described the process. We did have a chance, Megan and I, to meet just briefly with Lisa and Amy to talk about some of the ideas and get some input into the proposal. I think we're trying to think of it as a great opportunity. I think, as you can all imagine, this will blow our work program out of the water. And so it means a major reprioritization of projects in the Planning and Sustainability Department, which I think is something everyone needs to be aware of. We just were kind of doing rough calculations of approximately how many full-time employees it would require to run a $7 million grant program, and came up with the figure of 3 to 4 FTEs for something like that. So that's a significant impact on our work program.
All right.
Can I ask a follow-up, Leslyn?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is then more for the committee who put this together. And I guess I didn't fully understand whoever would be the staff folks working on this. Would they sort of be like proposals would come in? Would they be vetting those proposals before bringing a recommendation to the legislature, or would the legislature see like every proposal that came in? I just didn't understand, based on what they had written, what the intention was.
So let me go to Leslie and then Rich, because they might have answers.
Sure, thank you. I just want to speak to the first question, which was identifying planning and sustainability. I would say that decision came in partnership with administration in thinking about how we manage projects, funds, grant funds, and other particular programs similar to this. And so I believe that we were interested in thinking about planning and sustainability. I'm sure that you're super flattered, Katie, but I know that it's a lot of work. We were also identifying potentially other departments that could be working in collaboration here. So you'll see that in the document where we identify other departments that manage funds similarly, and perhaps it could be a cross collaboration across departments. So that was something we were thinking of, yet I believe Lisa was the first one to suggest that if this moves forward, that it would be something that planning and sustainability would be expert in, and they would be the professionals. On the second note, in thinking about, well, I'll let Rich answer the second one. Go ahead.
Yeah, what Leslie just said. No, I don't want to speak for Leslie and Mike, other than my recollection is what we determined was that, yes, planning or the responsible department would do a scoring and make recommendations, but ultimately it would be up to the legislature to approve or disapprove specific projects.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Just on the whole planning piece of it? Yep, no, I'm looking at staff. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Wonder if we might be making a mistake looking to our departments to take this on. We just heard Katie talk about what they're estimating would be the FTE equivalent of staff time to do this. Wouldn't it be better to think about contracting this out or hiring a consultant firm, for example, to vet these kinds of applications to us, give them some parameters, and then have them forward them to us for approval?
Okay, a suggestion. Martha? And then Rich.
Well, if Rich wants to answer that.
I was just going to say, we did consider that. We thought that maintaining it in-house, we'd have greater control and speed. And probably overall could do it more efficiently in terms of cost. But we did think about the benefit of hiring it out, but we determined that, well, we made the recommendation we made for those reasons.
And again, it's a recommendation. Martha, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the word recommendation might be adding more work than is needed. I've been thinking this should be more of a threshold. Does this proposal meet a threshold of, you know, the applicant is competent, it's a, you know, sort of a reasonable, it's in a reasonable ballpark, but not asking staff to really place a value judgment in a sense. That seems an extra layer of evaluation compared to, you know, the equivalent for an HR decision. Does this meet minimum qualifications? So I think, and I was talking to Katie about another issue today. I certainly think that moving other things off the work plan or delaying them is worth doing. This is important and we should move this ahead. So I'm quite comfortable with the idea of some staff moving other jobs, you know, to later in the year or next year even. But I wonder if sort of the work that we're asking for could it be managed a little bit? If, for one thing, I'm looking at I'm not really familiar with the STPB applications, but I know the housing fund applications are, I'm looking at Johanna Anderson from INHS. The housing fund applications are a big job. I would really not use that as a model. I don't think we need the level of detail and the level of documentation that those applications require. So I would think of something quite a bit simpler. So that's one thing, simpler applications, have staff do a different level of review and not a value of recommending this or that application. And further, another idea could be if we set a relatively high minimum grant amount, that would consolidate the grants, say $500,000 or $1 million, or I'm picking a number out of the air, rather than having to vet dozens and dozens of $5,000 requests. I think, you know, that would be another way to manage the staff load.
Thank you for your thoughts. I have Shauna and Deborah. I see you, Annie. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And
Leslie.
Henry. And Henry.
Yeah, I think that it really doesn't make sense to have our planning department take this on. I mean, we know that STPB literally takes a very full-time person to handle these applications and this process. And, you know, I trust Katie whenever she says 3 to 4 full-time people, that could be up to $350,000 of added increase in salaries that we're looking at. And I think we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to be doling out, let's just say, let's go at the high end of $15 million of grants. And I'm not saying I'm voting for 15 million, but let's just say the high end of 15 million. Most of these places like community, the Community Foundation or Human Services Coalition, they actually do the application process. They accept the applications and then they take a percentage of the administrative fee. I can't imagine that any administrative fee is going to go past $350,000 per year. And I understand wanting to have this within the agency, but Martha, to your point, the whole idea behind whether it's planning or Community Foundation or Human Services Coalition is that they are going to be accepting the applications and then helping nonprofits and agencies fill out the application. Not every agency is going to be your INHS or, programs that have grant writers and overly qualified people to fill out these applications. Some of these smaller vendors are really going to need help in filling out the application. And I really want planning to be able to focus on our green initiatives and the things that planning does well and best. And if we give them, this, taking away some of the workload that we've given them that is really, really important to our county, I think really undermines the great work that they do.
Thank you, Shauna. Deborah and Henry, and then Annie.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Leslyn, and thank you, Shauna, for your comments. When I first heard about this, one of the things I thought immediately was that rather than position this task in DPS, it belonged in admin, simply because I think that there's going to be a fair amount of tension and competition between human services and economic development applicants. And I didn't want there to be any appearance of unfairness. That consideration aside, I really personally am not willing to have DPS put in a position where it has to restructure its work plan. It's been functioning at top speed on a number of fronts. It's currently short one planner. We have a lot of initiatives that DPS has to handle that are of great importance to me personally. I don't think there's anything that should be more important than moving forward with greening our facilities and our fleet. I certainly don't consider this program more important than those tasks. So I, at the very least, would oppose tasking DPS with managing this program. I think as we continue to discuss these proposals, we need to consider that the more ornaments we hang on this tree, the more time consuming it's going to be to administer. The more different categories of eligible programs we have, the more expertise we're going to need to set up the parameters for all of those different types of programs and to evaluate their worthiness. And let's not forget that the other piece of this is going to be some kind of monitoring and oversight once money is distributed. I don't think giving it to one department within the county, unless that department is admin, makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Thank you. Henry?
Yes. I did not know the experience with the Community Housing Fund, although I'm on the committee this year as an alternate. I know it looks very complex, but I was on ACOD for the STPB this year, and the ACOD process was not complex, but it was also, I mean, Nick ran it, he had somebody else run it too. But it involved lots of people. And so I would think that we could also do the same thing with this funding, that we have an application, we have lots of people on it, we have 3 legislators on it, we have planning people on it, we have a number of people who could be on it, that wouldn't fall all on DPS's burden. We could have some administrative staff on it. And so we get like 10 people on it. And so that way we could model it after the ACOT or that kind of funding. Now, again, the money's not the same, but again, the concept is the same. And we have like about a 20-page report on each applicant on that. And so I could see that we could again ask many questions and do a 20-page report on each applicant, go through all the applications and handle it. So I don't see that we have to burden one system or one department with all the machinations. Thanks.
Thank you, Henry. Annie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the current chair of the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, I am vehemently against our planning department taking on this job of doing this. They've been understaffed this year. They've had to have new people come in, even when they were full staff, to onboard new people. And they've been, some of them have been pulled to do other duties because of COVID. I don't know if that's happening now, but it could be. These are my words. I just see it as a gutting of all the great goals that this department is working on. And as a legislature, we have been saying for at least since I've been here as a legislator that environmental and climate issues are at the forefront for us. And that has been reiterated in our budget presentation that you saw last night. So, I mean, I won't go into all the steps, but there's many, many steps to setting up this program. And people have mentioned other programs, they're already set up. This is not even set up yet. So it's going to take a lot of time and then follow through for a long time. So I would like to see some other agency taking this, not even at the county, other staff. As legislators, we have had extra work this year. And our staff has had extra work. We've been down staff in many departments. So I would like to see if there's some other way that we could do this. And I don't know how long it would take, but I'd like to, have it go as fast as possible. But I also would like to see us open it up too for smaller grants. I'm not saying down to 5 or 10,000, but some agencies might need 100,000, 200,000. So I'd like us to consider that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Mike Ziegler?
Well, no, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of where we don't want to put it, but I'd like to know where people think we should. I mean, if we don't put it in planning, one sec. Well, I was just 1 second. I mean, if we're not going to put it in planning, I mean, I just heard admin, but I would imagine admin would say the same thing, that we need more people. And it seems like it's a growing kind of thing that maybe we shouldn't have done what we did. I mean, if we were going to have to hire somebody anyway to facilitate this, now we're hearing we're going to have to hire multiple people to facilitate it. But yeah, I mean, if you think admin can handle it, then, I mean, I have no objection to where it goes. I just wouldn't know why a department wouldn't want to handle it, to be honest with you, but if that's a suggestion, admin, I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Mike. So from the get-go, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that the conversation centered around, if we're going to administer this, we're going to need bodies, right? That was said, loud and clear. It might not be one, it might be 3 people, it might be 4 people. So that is something that we all know already, we can keep in mind. Let me get a couple of other people and then I want to ask Katie a direct question. Let's see who was up next. Martha, Shauna, and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, I'm sort of agnostic about where. I think maybe admin has the bandwidth now that sort of the budget has been crunched. Maybe that's the heavy lifting. I know it's still a long way to go. I mean, it could also be one person from here and one person from there. And, you know, it's not like all on one department. You know, maybe there are lots of consultants in town who work on grants, who write grants and also evaluate, you know, who know therefore how to evaluate a good grant. United Way, Community Foundation. I think I kind of think I kind of would want to like agree we're going to have a fund and then figure out the details. I think this is doable. It needs to be doable. We can do this. I'm confident one way or another we can make this work.
Okay. Thank you. Shauna?
Yeah, I actually think you're right, Martha. I think there is compromise here. I do think that we need to figure out the process because that's the part that is in question, one of many. You know, I think as far as the process with this, it might be ideal to have another entity doing the admin and for DPS and admin and potentially other departments to be on a steering committee with recommendations. You know, that way we have all parties involved. They could accept the applications. The individual entity, the organization, Community Foundation, Human Services, these are just a few that I know of, can actually do the accepting of applications, and then we can have planning and admin as part of the process. And then all of the applications would come to the legislature for final decision.
Okay, that's one suggestion. Let me get Mike Lane and then Lisa, I see your hand.
I think that Martha and Shauna are on the right track here. Some of the money can be spent for administration of this grant program. I don't think it's that we have to short our departments or other programs that we have in order to make this go forward. And so that's why I think, Mike, that we should look to an outside entity to at least review the grant applications.
Okay, Lisa.
I don't think I'm going to add anything new except to say that in terms of staffing taking this on, the conversation always was, we do have individuals in the county that have the expertise. However, there would always have to be a displacement of work if we went this route, whether it be planning or admin. And currently, I don't, you know, the capacity is not there in either department without hiring in new people to take it on or displacing the workload that we have in both departments to a great extent to get this done. So I think the approach of, you know, partnering with others, I mean, even the idea of displacing the work among many departments, which, you know, would be a good idea to get multiple perspectives on the table. Someone has to pull all of the meetings together, come up with the parameters of the grant program. Someone has to do all of the structural work. And that's a sizable workload. So I'm just putting that out there.
And I thought talking about the process would be easy. I know what I was thinking.
May I have Lisa
I see
follow
you,
up on
Deborah.
that?
Leslie, go ahead.
Lisa, I just wanted to ask a quick follow-up on that. Are you suggesting still, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly, that you think that staff should develop the structural process, but as far as figuring out the vetting and the collection and the review of applications, you would see perhaps a different group, a broader group? Did I hear that correctly?
I wasn't saying necessarily that staff should do it. I was saying, you know, we we have staff with experience that has done it before, but in order to engage them, we would, those individuals would need to not do other things. So, so that's what I was saying. So if we had an outside entity that was charged with pulling everything together and the staffing in-house that was consulting or participating, that would be, you know, another option or another way to go.
Okay, I'm interested in hearing Katie's voice again, and I have a direct question for her. So go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah,
I know, Katie, I'm on it.
okay, this is a question I think for Lisa. When we first started talking about the ARPA funds, one of the things that we were concerned about was the staff time it would take to comply with the monitoring and reporting requirements. And my recollection was that that was one reason why we agreed that you needed 2 financial analyst people in admin. So I guess my question, my concern, my curiosity is if we are going to hire this extra person, could they be the point person to handle this process, which hopefully would be a lot less demanding in terms of reporting requirements and time than the ARPA reporting requirements that Treasury was handing down?
So to answer your question, yes, we do have an analyst position with the intention for that individual to be doing the auditing and financing tasks around ARPA. That level position and the title position, I don't necessarily see and have not seen necessarily as someone who could develop and manage the structure of a grant program. I see the job specs and the skill set probably very different than the auditing, financial accounting skills that we'd be looking for you know, a budget analyst. So I think in terms of doing some very some basic financial analysis toward a grant program they could do, but having the capacity and the kind of perspective and bandwidth to develop and pull together a community grant program probably would be a higher pay grade and a different skill set.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me grab Katie's voice in here. Katie, the planning department has been batted around as a potential place. We heard what you said earlier. Hearing what you're hearing now, I wonder, and just be direct with us. What are you thinking?
I think it's an opportunity to further a lot of the comprehensive plan goals and policies and implementation. And that's the side that I get excited about, and helping our community in this time of need. That's all great. I do think that perhaps some kind of partnership like Shauna was describing with an entity that is their main role, is developing grant programs that are successful, working with applicants that might not be used to making these kind of applications. I think it's very important to keep the equity lens on this entire conversation as well. And we've found with our homeownership, or with the housing program and other programs, working with non-traditional applicants is very rewarding, but it takes a huge amount of time and effort. And I think it's worth it, especially with an opportunity like this. It's important to get it out in the community. So therefore, you're talking about even more time than any of our grant programs are looking at. So I think something like having an entity run the program, yet a steering committee to make recommendations and review applications like I think Henry mentioned, the SDPB with some of their programs, each grant program has its own steering committee that then runs it through the SDPB that goes to the legislature. It could be a similar kind of function with a group making a recommendation that run it through a committee or the full legislature. One other point I wanted to make when people were talking about the size of the grants, I think, again, smaller grants, you could get more people and potentially people who haven't applied for many grant programs in the past. However, like our community celebrations grant is a $10,000 grant that takes approximately 80 hours of administrative time to run each year. Our bigger grant program, like the Arts and Cultural Development Program, that's a $250,000 program, and that takes about 120 hours. So you can see it's the scale is going to be very important when we set the minimums and the number of grants that we're hoping for. I will say that I'm looking at like Rick and Drew on this call, like finance, contracting, seeker compliance, all of that is still something that the county staff is going to have to do regardless of whoever runs it.
I just asked Katie, what were those numbers again? You said for the celebrations, it takes how many hours?
About 80 hours.
And for the larger grants, 120.
120.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Appreciate that feedback. So regardless of how we slice and dice it, what I'm hearing from you is that there's still going to be staff time involved on all across the board, not just, planning, but finance and, other places as well. So thank you. Thanks for your thoughts and your feedback. And especially want to thank you for mentioning just how important and rewarding it is for the work that, the smaller boards and committees that we have do that are in connection with planning, that it's rewarding for them to connect with community in that way and be able to keep things equitable. So thank you for that. Rich and then, no, Henry first. Henry had his hand up. Henry, Rich, Mike, Sigler. And then we need to come to some conclusion. Go ahead.
Yes, is there a reason, I assume the committee did not look into finding out what the other departments, what the other groups that around the county would do. Is there a reason why we cannot look into find out how much community foundation, how much these other places would cost us to partially run the program?
There's no reason. That's a suggestion you can make. That's why we're having this conversation. What are thoughts and suggestions?
I make that suggestion.
Okay, so there's one suggestion on the table. I don't know who will look into it, but we'll find out. Rich and then Mike Sigler.
In order to move dead center on this, I would propose that in the staff role category, we take out planning and sustainability department as the lead role and put it in county administration with it to be determined by county administration how it would be allocated, and including farming it outside to an outside agency and come back to us with a proposal.
Okay.
And is it appropriate to move that so we could get a vote? We get a sense of the.
I think it's very appropriate to do that.
I would move it.
And there's a second by my good friend over there who has a name, Glenn Morey.
He's got that mask on, you can't.
Say again what the motion is, please.
Yes, to remove in the staff role section of the proposal, to remove planning and sustainability department as the lead role, and to place it instead with county administration to determine the makeup of the lead group, including consideration of outside agencies.
That clear?
So this comment?
I was making sure from Amanda that it was clear.
I think so, but I guess wouldn't then that will shift to under administration role? I don't know. I'm a little confused.
Administration would have the responsibility of forming the group, whether it's from a variety of county departments or an outside agency. But administration would have the responsibility to come back to us with a proposal. Either keep it in administration, put it in a specific county department, or a group of county departments, or an outside agency. But the staff role would be decided through that proposal.
Point of voting on some sort of resolution here? I don't even understand.
This would be amending the proposal.
So Rich was amending the proposal. So instead of planning being the lead departments, that it states with administration, and administration be given the authority to pull together, whether it's a committee of folks from across departments or outside agency, all the things we've been talking about right now, and then coming back to us and say, look, we've weighed all of it. What Henry just said, we looked into what it would cost. It is going to cost this much, and we're proposing that you go in this direction. I don't know that admin want to take it on, but I'll ask Lisa as well. But this is what Rich is proposing that we do in terms of process.
But procedurally, do we really, I mean, is this like a getting a sense of consensus? Because this proposal is not the legislature's proposal. If the legislature wants Lisa to look into this, I don't understand why we're voting on it.
We can make a motion to do that. This is a legislature meeting. We assigned a special committee to bring a proposal before us. We'd either be voting to accept this proposal tonight or not. And so Rich is suggesting here is something I'd like to put on the floor as a resolution, as a direction to move in so that we can move this along.
And Deborah, I agree with you. The procedure is a little fuzzy. On the other hand, if we don't do this, we will just relive the meeting we had 4 weeks ago, where we just deconstruct the proposal and nothing sits in its place. That's my fear.
Well,
And also, Martha, I see you. And partly also what I heard around the table is if people are not chomping at the bits to say, yes, let's accept this and let planning do this. You know, we understand that. And so there's an option being proposed. All right, I have Martha.
Yeah,
Sigler.
Martha
Go ahead.
Sigler.
we can absolutely take action with a motion on the floor. That's one of the ways we don't always do something with the basis of a resolution. Now, this is a written proposal, so it's not like the whole thing's just hand waving. So I think what you're saying, Rich, is kind of on the second page, the first bullet. Instead of planning and sustainability identified as high quality staff to lead this process, just admin, will be staff to lead this process. Is that right? So that's what you mean by amending the document we have?
Or come to us with a proposal for leadership of the program.
Okay.
One or the other, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think, well, I mean, if admin is leading it, that could be leading it internally, completely in admin, or it could be leading it, like leading a steering committee, leading a mixed group.
Exactly what I
Yeah,
said
right.
10
So,
minutes ago.
right. I would also submit that, legislators can sometimes actually get work done. There could be, worker bees assigned from the legislature to actually help investigate some of these things and sort through some of these things. So there's that too.
Well, I will tell you, given the rate we're going, I'm not sure, Martha. And I also worry. I also worry right now about putting something in admin. You know, we agreed to have a small group of us go work on a process, come back. They did. We'll talk about it. Here we are talking about it. And as Rich said, it looks like we're going back to where we were before. Admin might come back with something and there we go, back to where we were before. We don't necessarily agree with what they come up with. So we have to make some decision about what is it we want to do. And that want to do might be, yes, we're not gonna have planning do it, but we would like to see an outside agency, or we would like to see some hybrid. And, you know, and so we're asking somebody, admin or whoever, to come back with that proposal based on what we say we want. So when we set this group off, we didn't have any consensus of what we want, just go back and come back with a proposal. Mike Sigler.
I was just gonna say after this discussion, I was pretty comfortable with what Mike Laney said earlier and just send it out of house. I mean, from what I'm hearing is we would have to hire more people than we needed than if we had just taken the funds from the feds and had a report. So that means and then Rich's suggestion, that seemed to be a pretty good compromise, actually, between what Mike said and what other people are saying, put in an admin. So, you know, that's where I'm at anyway. I don't know where you guys are.
I think part of it also goes with what Shauna said now, no, half an hour ago, whatever it was. Let's see, who's got hands up? Deborah and Amanda and Annie. And then let's figure out where we go.
I want to be sure I understand what it is that Rich is putting on the floor. Is he suggesting that that we ask Lisa and admin to investigate what the options are to have some sort of hybrid process that might involve an outside organization? Or is he suggesting that we're voting on amending this proposal and then adopting it? Because I would certainly not have a problem voting in favor of the former, but I'm not there on the latter.
I was proposing the former.
The former is what Rich is proposing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think if we're gonna vote on this proposal and make amendments to it, we have to put the proposal on the table. It doesn't make sense to call what you're saying, Rich, an amendment, because we're not amending anything. We need to have something on the table that we're voting on. So based on what Deborah just said, I think we need to talk about it as if we're voting to give guidance to our administration department, not on this proposal. Just want to be clear.
We're asking for information.
Right.
And I think, thank you for asking for that clarification. I think what Rich is suggesting, although he said replace the lead on the proposal, he was just talking about staff roles. So it is pretty much, and we can have him repeat it, just the legislature authorizing administration to work on a process for moving this forward, or whatever procedures, with a broad guidance that it could be an outside agency, it could be some combination of staff from varying departments, it could be a group of community stakeholders that they pull together, or it could be just administration saying, we got this, we're gonna do it just in admin. Any number of those things is what's being proposed as an option. I'd like to hear from Lisa.
I'll just say, like planning, we have very little capacity to, I mean, we don't have a county administrator. So what we're doing is we're down a person. We finally have budget staff in place, which is fantastic, but it doesn't mean that we're flush to take on new projects. We have, you know, we're dealing with COVID, reimagining public safety, and the day-to-day operations of a large organization along with just the start of the budget process. So that said, I will gladly look into the options and come forth with a recommendation to move forward. But in terms of taking this on in our department and leading it, we do not have the capacity. And, I just need to start putting boundaries on my own time and my staff's time, because I haven't had a vacation in a really long time, since before COVID hit. So, we're really looking at staff burnout here. It's not a lack of willingness of wanting to move forward with what the proposals of the legislature. It is really, looking at coming up against our own capacity issues.
At least I appreciate that. I want to make sure that it's clear that we're not asking admin to, manage this grants process. What is being proposed again is asking if admin, I think you said it best, is to investigating what are the options and bringing to us a proposal for what the option is to move forward, to move the process forward.
Yes, thank
Right,
you.
but-
Thank you for clarifying. And I think that the options that we'll be bringing forward, if they do not involve, our own staff and displacing other workload, we will be looking at outside entities.
And that's what we're asking for you to consider. So again, what Henry said, how much does it cost? Is it, are they going to do all the things we ask them to do, blah, blah, blah. I see Katie's hand up and I want to acknowledge that because I think staff input is important.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to mention that until we have a better sense of kind of the minimum and maximum grant awards and the number of grants that you're anticipating going out each year, I think these conversations with our local entities that run these programs will be pretty hypothetical. I mean, they need to know that to know what the staff impacts would be. Same thing for any of our internal group as well. So maybe that's something for the legislature to kind of look at, who are the eligible entities? What's the contracting? And I mean, some of that is doable, especially the number of grants per year. I mean, if we're trying to get 7 million out the door in a short amount of time, that's a very different request of a local organization. So just something to think about.
Thank you, Katie. We haven't gotten to the money part yet, but that's on the docket.
Great.
As well as the priorities part, which was another part of the proposal that came before us. So let's see, who's next? Martha.
Amanda might have been.
I'm sorry, actually, it was Annie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know I was very talking about planning department before, but since Katie talked about possibly they could have some role in this, so just a question, and hearing how we are, 1/3 down in administration, and there's a lot of things going on right now. Would this be the type of thing that planning department, when we get to that step, could look at an agency, or or just wondering how we would we do an RFP, or if you had any suggestions for us, or who could do this in the county?
I think.
Do you want me to reply to that,
Liz? That's what we're asking them to go away and think about and come back. But if we try to do it right now, I think we're going to have a very long conversation that won't lead anywhere. This is going to take planning from Lisa and a recommendation back. And obviously echoing what Leslin said, we're not asking Lisa to do more with less. We're not dumping work on administration. We're saying, come back to us with a proposal on how you fill this staff component of the proposal. And then we talk about it. But if we try to get answers on that right now, they're not ready to tell us, I don't think. I mean, I don't want to interrupt if you want to try to do it, but we're going to waste a tremendous amount of time trying to do it right now, I think.
I wasn't talking about doing it right now. What I was just wondering, just if we're saying Lisa to do this and possibly her department doesn't even have the time to do that. And I'm cognizant of, right, maybe it's not right now. There's nothing to be done, but later on, we're trying to figure out the process. Once we get A, B, and C figured out, you know, who would do this. And maybe that's the question that we don't want to ask. I don't know.
No, it's not a question we don't want to ask, but, you know, before Rich chimed in, I was going to also offer Annie that I think that level of detail of process will come a little later once we know who's doing what. Once we know what's the proposal, is some outside agency going to do it, manage the process, then we will get that part of it. So are they going to take RFPs? Are they, you know, what is it going to be?
Okay, thank you.
That's what I was going to suggest. Amanda and Martha.
Thank you. I do not think we should ask any of our staff to look into this anymore. This was something the legislature wanted to do. We appointed a subcommittee. They brought us back a recommendation. The majority of folks I'm hearing here didn't like that recommendation for this one part of it. So I think our subcommittee should go back and do this work. And that's why we put together all these subcommittees. And to Martha's point, legislators can do work. I think what we're hearing from our staff is that they are busy people. And this, even just putting together a proposal and doing the research of who would do this, I mean, that's going to take them time. And that's what the subcommittee, I think, should be doing. So I will vote, if we're going to vote on something, I will vote against giving it to admin or planning or whoever. And I would vote for having the subcommittee go back and take a look at this again. That's the point. They're supposed to be, you know, working on this and then bringing it back to us. So
I'd like to say, Amanda, challenge accepted. We will do
yes.
this.
Amanda, thank you for your thoughts. I'll hold my thoughts for a minute. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and I would volunteer. I mean, it doesn't have to be that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that set of three. Come on, come on.
Committee is.
No, I mean, in a prior life, I was a fundraising person, wrote grants all the time. You know, so I can call George Ferrari at the Community Foundation, pick his brain, you know, that kind of stuff. Now, if there is a process issue about what are we voting on, I know we've got a motion on the floor, but I would, if it feels better, I would move the whole proposal as the thing we're, you know, considering and voting on. Rich would have to undo his or whatever, but maybe that's the right step, is just to put the whole document on the floor for consideration. So.
All right, I'm gonna go to Rich and, not Rich, Deborah and Shauna and Rich. Thank you, Martha, for that suggestion.
Well, if we're sending it, if we end up sending it back to the committee, I offer up the possibility that what we could do is leave it to the program committees to come up with the parameters of the programs that apply to the outside agencies that report to those program committees, and to more or less administer the program. I'm thinking particularly, for example, HHS could take advantage of the expertise that we have in the Human Services Coalition to vet proposals. When we first thought about this particular program, that was one of the suggestions that was floated. That would be, so they would operate sort of the way that STPB does with tourism money. I don't know if we have an organization that could do the same thing for economic development, but it's just another possibility that would take a lot of the weight of this off of staff, because that seems to be a major problem. And I will say this, when we start talking about how much money we have to dedicate to this program, you're going to find that adding, $350,000 to the cost of the program to add FTEs is going to make a serious dent in how much money you're going to be able to give out to the community. And I don't think any of us want to see that happen.
So I am going to pull this in a minute and ask a question. There's a proposal on the table for putting this in the admin's lap to do some investigation and come back with a proposal and which way to go. Around the table, the sentiment is definitely not planning as came in the proposal from our subcommittee. But there is also a lot of talk about using an outside agency. So I wonder if we took a vote on, and we'll have to amend what Rich says, on investigating and hiring an outside agency to do this, if this would move us to a different place.
Leslie, if I can suggest entity, because we may find like,
Entity, agency, individual.
An individual consultant might be.
Yep. I'll be looking for a job come January 1.
And could it be plural? Could it be agencies?
Agencies, entities, individuals, firms, partners, whatever. Sounds like an idea. So, Rich, I'm going to amend your
Amendment?
Something
that's not on the floor?
Friendly, if we could make some decision.
That's what we're trying to get to.
And just to Amanda's point, to send it back to subcommittee, you'd have to give us some guidance. I have zero interest in going back and spending quality time with Mike and Leslie. I know. But just to come back here and say, do you like this one? Right? I mean, if we as a group have a responsibility to make decisions and we're avoiding them as carefully as we possibly can.
That's why I'm trying to get to that.
I'm fine if the will of the group is outside entity or agencies, whatever you want to do, I'm fine with calling that friendly, but let's make a decision. Let's vote.
So
I'll second that.
would somebody proposal to
I think Kathy will want Rich to withdraw his motion.
withdraw? Withdraw.
What is it that you want me to,
So Sean, is that what you're about to do?
No, I had something completely.
Okay. All right, Mike Lane, you want to do that because you brought it up first?
I would move that we direct county administration to proceed to investigate and do a proposed contract or contracts with agencies to administer the recovery grant program for the county.
The staff role.
Okay.
I thought the idea was the subcommittee would go back. No?
No, subcommittee is not going back. We are making a decision inside, do we want to move to using an outside entity? And then we know the normal process, if we do that, is that we authorize county administrator to enter into a contract with whomever, whatever the process will be.
I'll second.
Seconded by Annie. Discussion. Shauna and then Martha
Yeah, so
and Henry.
I would support county admin going out and gathering information. I mean, that's not going to take that much time. to meet with the 2 or 3 consultants here in town and come back with a proposal for us. You know, as far as it going back to the committee, I would not want to do that. You know, I appreciate the work that was done by the 3, but I definitely think it would better fit in administration to come in with an unbiased opinion on this. I also think, you know, as far as Deborah's thought of it going to the program committees, I think what makes the most sense is making the application process and the grant process absolutely the same across the board. And I'm afraid if we have different committees accepting different processes and applications, and HSC doing HHS and planning doing INHRS and everything else, I think it just gets really confusing, and we have money going out the door, and it's really disorganized. So I do not think that's a good idea.
All righty, Martha and Henry.
I like the subcommittee idea, and I'll just volunteer if I can be of any help to do any phone calls, but you know, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Henry and then Lisa.
Yes, I just thought we were getting information, not assigning a decision to county administration to make, because we don't know what the prices are. We don't know how, we're basically just gathering information. So I would vote against this resolution because this resolution directs someone to do something. Thanks.
Henry, there are 13 people on this call who cannot make a decision on this. So I am ready to direct someone to do something and bring something back to us that we can vote on. Because if we don't do that, you know, I don't know where we're going to go. Lisa.
Thank you. And and thank you all for the offers, for everyone pitching in on this and understanding some of the bandwidth issues of staff. I do ultimately think whatever direction we go in, even using a consulting agency, there are roles and responsibilities for county staff that have to be covered initially. There are a lot of bases that need to be covered in terms of legal issues, issues around gifting, and also bidding, depending upon how, you know, what we're contracting into with a consultant or et cetera. So there are those bases to be covered as well. Katie brought up seeker issues. So some of even if we go with an outside entity who can help us structure and put this work in, where we are, the grant funds are flowing through the county as a municipality, and there are certain particularities that we need to make sure that we're aware of. So I do think that coming back to you with all of that information and recommendations is something that we should do to help guide the decision-making moving forward.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Leslyn had to step away for a few minutes. So we have, I think, Martha, is your hand up?
Yeah. I know it takes like 12 people to spend a government dollar, right? I understand. There's no way to do any of this, you know, really simply. But we voted to spend 100% of the ARPA money on county projects and needs because the reporting would be simpler. So fine, okay. But a lot of us voted for that with the idea that there would be a process and a way and some generosity for the community as well. So I just want to make sure that the idea of helping the community is seen as a good thing. I guess that's all. And
can't
worth the time,
I can't imagine anyone on this call's intention is any different than you mentioned.
Yeah.
Doubt it if you want. However, we have to come to a compromise. And we have to figure this out. We can't spend tons of time.
All I'm saying is, we understand that, Jonathan's gonna have to make some evaluations, and then contracting's gonna have to get involved. We get that, but nevertheless, the community needs us.
Okay, thank you. Leslie,
Donna?
and then who else just raised their hand?
But Sean,
Okay, Leslie.
go with, take Leslie. Go ahead.
Leslie and then Mike.
Thanks. Just want to say, I'm comfortable if admin is comfortable taking that step. All of those roles are outlined in the document, if folks know. We recognize that there were definite roles for administration throughout the process, definite roles for staff if we identified internal staff that will work on this, and roles for legislature. What we tried to do, and doing it in partnership with the administration, to think about how they would like this to work, and so that it's functional, efficient, managed well, that we have fiduciary responsibility and oversight. These are not small dollars. What we're talking about, this is real money. I mean, this is bigger than most grant funds that give out money, and we're talking about something that can make significant, real, even transformative change in this community. And to do that, I think it's going to need to be rigorous. So I completely understand the concern about the level of work. This will be real work. To that, I do want to understand the capacity of any local agency entity and whether they have the expertise to manage something at the level that we would expect at the county. So I do think we need a little more information. And I would really appreciate if you think you have the capacity to do that. I guess one question that I have that we haven't gotten to yet, and I'll appreciate that Leslyn was laying this out in particular order, is the timing, right? And we know that timing has been on and off a question, but we brought the money in thinking about how we'll manage it from our fund balance should this recovery fund move forward. Time is of the essence. It's of the essence, even though we're all under a crunch, and I recognize that and feel it myself. The community is hurting, has been from COVID, continues to, and I would just ask that we keep a time-bound framework and think about how we can roll this out so that it's meaningful to people in their time of need. And that's not saying that we're not all trying to do that. I just want to bring it back to the fore. It's something we haven't talked about yet. Katie brought up the money, right? The first paragraph lays out the money, the timing, the rounds. We haven't gone there yet, but all of those things are really critical when you're building a new plan or a new process. To understand those things helps define their path. So I just want to be thoughtful about if there is the capacity to do this in a kind of a near timeline. I'd like to understand that.
Thank you. Mike Lane and then Deborah.
Call the question.
Thanks, Mike. I see Leslyn is back.
I'm sorry, but just
Calling the question on the motion.
calling the question in a motion. Is there a second to calling the question? Second by Sean. All right, let's vote on calling the question.
Can you remind us what
What the question is?
All right, we're gonna have Kathy read back the question. What's the motion?
To direct the county administrator to proceed and investigate and to contract with outside agencies to administer the programs for the county.
Outside
The staff role.
entities.
The staff role,
I'm sorry?
the staff role in the proposal.
County administration staff.
And was that, and the report back to us with that recommendation, is that,
Yes,
okay?
Final clarification.
yes.
It sounded like the question said we're authorizing the administrator to contract. That's different than coming back to authorization. I'm genuinely not sure which one we're voting on.
That's a good clarifier. Mike, what were you? Repeat what it is that you.
Maybe we need to insert the word, come back to us with options for contract.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's it.
So let's, thank you for asking for that clarification. So let's make sure we get it nice and clear for everyone.
I still don't fully get what we're voting on. Are we voting? So we're saying we want to know from outside agencies or entities what it would take to administer this, but we're taking off the table internal staff and departments? Or we're asking them to come back with a whole gamut of information?
The proposal right now on the table is not using internal staff. It is coming back with proposals from outside entities. That clear?
Yes.
Okay. Any other clarifier before we vote? Yes, ma'am.
Timing.
I don't know, 4 years from now? Wait until I'm gone now.
We're still calling the question, I think.
Not debatable.
The question is not debatable, but that's a good thing. Are you asking for a clarifier of timing in it? Well, while we just,
Well, that wasn't the original motion, but it's
That's-
an
yeah.
important question.
that's not the original motion, that's what I'm thinking.
That'll be the next motion.
We can add with all due speed.
I'm looking at administration because I don't want to put a time on it, and the administration is not how long it'll take. Plus, there's just too much debate going on the question that's being called. So, yeah, let's just vote on the call the question, and then we have the motion will be on the table, and then you can ask about that, Leslie, okay? So let's vote on calling the question. All in favor of calling the question, it's a roll call vote because some members are attending remotely.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dave McKenna,
Yes.
Glenn Maury,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Leslie Show,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
No,
Leslie McBean Claiborne,
Yes.
with 13 ayes, 1 no.
All right, thank you. So the question has been called. So now we have to vote on there's no more discussion, and we're just voting on the motion that's on the table. And is everyone clear about it, or do you need it reread?
Reread.
need it reread.
Direct county administration staff to proceed and investigate and come back with options to contract with outside entities to administer the program for the county and report back to the legislature with a recommendation.
Can I ask for one slight edit, the recovery fund program, not just the program, so we know what we're talking about?
And I would add, if you look at the proposal, there's administration role, staff role, legislature role. We're talking about the staff role.
Yeah, right. Okay, so the question has been called. There's no more discussion. Let's vote on the motion, and we have some clarification.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dave McKenna,
Yes.
Glenn Maury,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Leslie Show,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black, Shauna Black,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes,
Leslie McBean Claiborne?
Yes.
14 ayes, 0 noes.
Okay, that carries. Thank you all so very much, and thank you for finally somebody using call a question. So two other parts of this conversation that needs to happen. One, we need to talk about the money part of it, because administration will need to know how much money are we talking about that we're saying to these entities, this is what we're looking to administer, and for them to know if it's worth their time or not. We also need to talk about what kind of timing are we looking to get this back. And if you're passing around food, I haven't had some. You know, it never gets any because it never makes it here. So why don't we go to the funds part of it. So the committee that we put together brought forward a proposal that we have an initial round of funding that we will commit 15 million with an initial round of funding of $7 million. Going once, going twice, gone. Oh, no?
No.
True. Dan Klein.
Thank you. So this is the part of the proposal I don't support, is the dollar amount. In fact, I don't even support the idea of a specific dollar amount. I would like to see this process more like our OTR process, which is not perfect, but nothing we do is. And in that process, we don't have a dollar amount set up ahead of time. We hear a proposal, we weigh the merits of the proposal, and we vote yes or no, and we keep doing that. And at some point, we take into account, how much the cumulative dollar amount is of all this. And that's the way I would prefer to see it. And the reasons have to do with, I don't mean this as an insult, but as the artificiality of just picking a number ahead of time. Related to that is that we are still in the pandemic. We don't know what's happening next. We really are not in a position to make very solid predictions about where we're going and what the needs are going to be going forward. So I am not personally in a hurry to spend this money. And then also, I would say that it's not exactly clear to me what the needs are out there. When we say people are hurting, the community's hurting, I'm not exactly clear who and how to address those issues. So some of them, are clear, at least to me, probably I think a lot of people would agree, but others are really kind of murky. And that's why I would vote on a case-by-case basis. This proposal, proposal A makes sense to me, so I'd support it. Proposal B doesn't, so I wouldn't support that one, without having ahead of time knowing what dollar figure we're trying to get up to. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts, Dan. Martha.
Dan, do you mean start a solicitation and application process sort of on a rolling approval basis, that idea?
Yes.
I like a lot of that, but I'm thinking like, if you just do purely rolling, then you just have first come, first serve, and an application you might comes along a little later. But I kind of like the idea of open-ended, like a set time frame, but an open-ended dollar amount, if you know what I mean. So that it's okay. We're going to set up, applications by October 31st. We're not setting what the maximum amount is, although maybe we want to set it. Maybe you'd say 15 is the maximum total, but not specifying this amount this year and this amount next year, but seeing what comes in the door, and say, if we said October 31st, then by December 15th, we have all the applications and we vote on what we have in front of us. Is that sort of what you mean?
That is sort of what I mean, is I would be much more comfortable with that sort of process.
I like that. I mean, I think it says that we can't on a prior basis, really know what the community is going to bring to us. We might have an upper limit that says, okay, we're going to freak out if we spend such and such, so we're not going to spend any more than that. But it allows people to just bring what they have. Okay, oh, it's interesting.
All righty. Thank you. I see Leslie.
Thank you. Just for the public or anybody who may be joining, I'd just like to read the first paragraph of this document so that folks know kind of a little bit of background, which just reads as established as a commitment between the Tompkins County Legislature and our community. The Tompkins County Recovery Fund, known as the fund, is a new grant fund that will commit $15 million to meaningful initiatives and needed local projects. This fund will be distributed through a series of 3 competitive funding rounds with an initial round of $7 million. This was the proposal. This is what we're talking about here, just so folks know what we're thinking about. I would like to say that I appreciate your viewpoint and thinking about this differently. I still would recommend to make the significant transformative change and to really address the needs that we've heard across all of the listed categories, and we know there are more. We know there are different categories. We've even heard some folks come and speak on the floor and give suggestions of other needed initiatives in our community. The idea of this recovery fund is that it does allow the community to recover. It also allows the community agency in identifying the needs and developing the solutions that we need as a community. And so in doing so, I think that it allows for something that could be big as opposed to coming with very small solutions. I think it allows for us to do things that will be timely. And I think it allows for the impact to be felt in a meaningful way. And we know when there's something that's larger, it can really build momentum to make a bigger change in that area, whether it's an area like environment or whether it's an area like childcare, economic development. The big changes really start to kind of create the new ground for other changes that can come to pass. So that's the thinking behind it, but with a lot of flexibility so that we as a county now and in the future can look and say, how are we doing financially? What are our needs? And we can look at these funding rounds in the future. We specifically pulled out years because we thought we don't know what next year is going to bring. So we can start with the first round and look at next year, check out the books as we go through. It could be before budget season if we're doing great. It could be during budget season if we want to be a little more cautious. We wanted to make sure that the next legislature will also have, all the good information that they need in order to feel comfortable moving forward. But at the same time, remembering we don't know everything, and the county government cannot serve and fix every problem out there. But we have an opportunity to allow people to bring forth their great ideas for how we can improve this community. So that was the intent, and then more to come.
Thank you. Amanda, Deborah.
Thanks. Well, I wanted to thank Rich and Leslie and Mike for taking the time to, get together and put together a proposal. And so thank you. I don't feel that we should be committing $15 million. The way that I look at this is that it's not ARPA, but it is related to ARPA, and we wouldn't be considering doing this program if we hadn't gotten or planning to get, $19 million from the federal government. So I'm still thinking about the money part of it as, we're getting $19 million. How much of that do we want to put towards the community? Regardless of which, process or program that we're going to use. So I don't think, like Dan said, I don't think it's an arbitrary number. I think I don't think that folks would say, hey, let's put 30 million in, because that's way more than we would get from ARPA. So anyway, for me, I think around 10 million makes sense, which are about half of what we would be getting from ARPA, works for me. And I think I actually really like what Dan said as well about sort of, looking at each proposal as it comes in, because I too don't really know, like, we have had folks come and talk to the legislature and tell us, what their needs are. But I think seeing it written, seeing what impacts they've had and felt would help me more determine, where is the greatest need. I would worry as well with that kind of process, if it would be first come, first serve. So that, I guess, would have to be thought through. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple more comments and I'll ask for a proposal or a resolution, something that we can vote on. Deborah.
Yeah, thank you, Leslyn. I appreciate the thought and work that everybody's put into this. There are a couple of things I'd really like to address. First of all, I've heard people say I would have never agreed to commit this money to county operations if I didn't think that we were going to have a recovery program. I want to remind you that when we kept that money for county operations, we used it to support, $728,666 in restoration of funding, target funding to human services agencies, to CCE, to IAED, to the public library, to the rural libraries, to Tompkins Community Action. We also used the ARPA funds to pay for almost $500,000 worth of OTRs to those same organizations. So that's about $1.2 million that we kicked in of that ARPA money to human services and community organizations. Earlier this summer, we gave $573,000 in fund balance out of the contingent fund to the Convention and Visitors Bureau and various tourism agencies. And we're also using the ARPA funds, as I understand it, to fund an additional $655,000 in one-time support to the STPB agencies. So, that's another $1.2 million. I think we need to remember that the money that we use for county operations is money that the county uses to support community organizations. So that's my first point here. I wish people would bear that in mind. It wasn't like we said, oh, $20 million, 14 legislatures can go to the Bahamas.
We didn't.
No, we didn't. Sorry, Leslyn. The other piece of this is, we heard the budget presentation last night. I want to remind people that it didn't include monies that we're going to have to dedicate towards the second and third year of TC3's workforce curriculum program. And it didn't include monies that we're going to have to kick in for TC3's capital plan. Those monies are probably going to diminish our fund balance. But as we learned today, there's $39,552,000 in fund balance after applying the various uses and allocations that we did in 2021 and that we are planning to do in the 2022 budget. If you subtract 18% of our $194 million operating budget, which is the recommendation for this upcoming fund balance, that leaves us, let's see, with about $5 million in disposable fund balance. I want people to bear that in mind when they're making a decision about how much to spend on this program. My personal preference would be that we don't allocate into future years, that we set up this program. And I think I'm probably landing in a place close to what Dan is proposing. We set up this program, and each year after our budget process, the legislature will know how much money it has in fund balance for a program like this and can allocate funds to the program accordingly. Yeah, so that's the resources side of it. And I also agree with Dan that we're not yet in a position to know what the needs side of it is, because we are not out of this pandemic. I fear that if we gave a big pile of money to a particular sector or need, and then we ended up, in an economic shutdown again, or if we had a huge medical need that we had to meet, we wouldn't have the money. We would have thrown away the money we gave out, and we wouldn't have the money to meet a newly emerging need. So I would really like to see us say, okay, maybe at the end of this year, we have $5 million to put into this program. That's what we'll give away. And then next year, the legislature next year goes through its budget process and figures out what it has, and it can give X dollars away. I just can't bring myself to say, oh yeah, we can afford $15 million, because in my point of view, we cannot. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. We're gonna have to pull this together now. Even if Henry, I do see you and I'll grab you. Even if we don't necessarily agree on the proposal that comes out of the committee, for what we're asking administration to do, any entity out there that is going to be saying, yeah, we'll do it, they would want to know, how much money are we talking about administering, so they know how much time it'll take and what overhead costs they will attach to it. So we have to come up with something. Otherwise, the proposal we just did, resolution we just passed earlier, doesn't seem to bear any weight, because they wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how to say, put in a proposal to say, yes, we can do it for, $20,000 when I don't know how much money we're administering and how much time it's going to take. So we have to figure out something along that line. Henry, and then Rich Johns and Martha Robertson.
Unmute. Yes, my feeling is that, one, we should give away $15 million. We should give away $20 million. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, since that was the ARPA funding. And since I know that Deborah and I disagree what the purpose of the ARPA funding was, but many of the ARPA funding's initiatives were proactive spending money in the community, not holding on to it as lost revenue. That was one option, but the other options basically spent it in the public. Secondly, we can vote whatever we want to vote, whether we're not binding the other legislators. They could come back next year and say, no, we don't think that you should put a dime into this program. They can always change it. So one theory is fine. We'll commit ourselves to $7 million this year, with the expectation that the next years will be 5 and 3, but no guarantees. That's one option. Also, I want to focus on Deborah's words saying throwing the money away. I don't think that we're throwing the money away. I think we're investing in the community. Simple as that. We don't know what the community needs, but we've heard that childcare needs $4 million. We know INSH needs $2 million. We know other groups have asked for money. And so we know there's need out there. Leslie has documented there's need out there. We took a survey. we could tell there was need out there. And so all those reasons are for why we want to do this. I went to NISAC this week, and they had an ARP session, and they talked about one county, Lewis County. They gave away all their ARPA funding. And when I asked, well, why are you giving away all your ARPA funding? And they said, well, we have a very significant fund balance, and we want to basically put the money back in the community. We don't want to just keep holding on to the money. And so again, that's my logic to it. And again, we're not throwing away the money. The money is being invested in something. It's being invested in childcare. It's being invested in INS, so they could do affordable housing projects or whatever. And so I do not see this throwing the money away concept. Also for Dan, you know, ACOT has, I mean, basically we deal with budgets and we have numbers. And so we don't sit there. Now, we may not have a strict number, but we don't just say, okay, well, let's just charge up real property taxes more. We have a budget that we work within. I think that it's just prudent to do that with this money, in fact, too, because again, we didn't receive an unlimited amount. We received a set amount. And so then I think that we have to work in set amounts so that, again, if we get a proposal for $5 million, that's amazing. We could say, well, look, that takes up all the funding for this year. That takes a significant amount of funding. We can't fund it all. And so that's why I think we should have some kind of parameters around the funding. Let me get off my high horse and let someone else speak. Thank you.
So Henry, do you have a proposal for an amount of money? Because we're talking about this and there's not a proposal on the table. So I'm asking folks, someone wants to move a resolution.
Fine.
I'll put an amount of money on the table.
I'll move the resolution for $15 million over 3 years with the amounts of 7, 5, and 3 given out.
So that's moved by Henry is what came out of the subcommittee, seconded by Mike Sigler. Now let's continue talking. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, the numbers we came up with in the subcommittee were a compromise. We were trying to recognize that there was a real diversity of opinion among the legislature on whether we should spend anything to a number quite a bit higher than 15. The idea of the 3 rounds is to spread it out over time. I would note, and we haven't gotten to that yet, that we decoupled it from the fiscal year. That what we anticipated was that the legislature would be gaining new information over time and assessing the appropriate timing of future tranches or funding rounds. And frankly, you know, it could be longer than 3 years if we determine that the economic situation is not what we would want it to be. Also, to Dan's point, if you don't say any numbers, you kind of have a shapeless program. I don't think you instruct the public on what we're really trying to do. At the same time, the proposal is set up that any proposal comes back on an individual basis to be voted on by the legislature. So in some sense, we're doing what Dan was asking, of looking at each proposal individually. And frankly, if the proposals come in and I think they're really deficient, I won't vote for them. You know, and so I think we do consider them serially in that sense. And it's quite possible we get our first round and we don't spend the full 7 million because we don't have worthy projects or what we believe to be worthy projects before us. I think it can work. I said this was a compromise. I would certainly support a lower number, but this is the number that came out of the subcommittee. You know, if you think it should be something else, propose something else, but I think we should vote on this one. See where we're at.
Okay, so on the table is a resolution for us to commit $15 million to the recovery fund. And Henry's resolution specifically was for 7 million year one, 5 million year two, 7 million year one, 5 million year two, and 3 million year three. That was Henry's.
Clarification, was that amending the proposal to recouple it to the fiscal year, Henry? Or were you just saying 3 rounds?
I was just saying 3 rounds, but I adopt the proposal submitted by the committee entirely.
3 rounds,
Not tied to the
funding.
fiscal year.
a total of 15 million committed. That is the proposal on the table, moved by Henry, seconded by Mike Sigler.
And not connected to the fiscal year.
Not connected to the fiscal year. Other comments on the resolution that's on the table? Yes, Mike, I had Mike Lane. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I can't vote for this. You know, one word that we haven't heard much about in this discussion is the word taxpayer. And, you know, we represent people who are going to have to pay taxes for government operations as we go along. And they're looking for us to be protective of their money. I thought Deb Dawson gave a very good rundown here of some of the things that are at risk. And Dan, you mentioned the fact that we aren't out of the pandemic and we don't know what's coming. I think that's very, very true. I would not have this decoupled from our fiscal years. I think each year we need to look at the budget, and we don't learn things about the budget until September of each year. As we know from our meeting last night, that's when we first learned a lot of details that we have each year for our budget. I don't think we should commit more than $5 million for the first round. I do think we need to do that. But I think, and we may very well end up spending $15 million over 5 years. I don't know. I'm sorry, over 3 years. But I think each year we need to look at what we have to spend as the upper limit as these applications come in and we approve them, hopefully. But to say from the get-go, we're going to do 15 million. And I think when we've only got, we got 20 million in aid from the ARPA funds, of which we've basically decided we would use that to replace our revenues, of course, but we said that would then free up 75% of that for capital programs. And so we're talking about the other 25%. And I think for 1 year, 5 million is the right figure.
Are you making an amendment, Mike?
Let's let other people talk to them. Please come back to me for that.
Oh, Mike, trying to wrap it up.
I don't want to cut other people off.
Go ahead, Martha, and then Leslie, and then Mike Sigler. And I see the other people on screen as well.
Okay, I think our public has been amazingly patient with this process and with us. I'm hearing needs for and ideas for a Medicaid dentist, a mental health clinic downtown, affordable housing gaps in existing projects, and a reentry house for parole, reentering folks from parole, up to possibly five or six new childcare programs or programs that would be able to create new slots for kids. One of the things I love about the proposal is it identifies that, a criterion would be that the proposals can leverage private, state, or federal money. So whatever comes in here and whatever we fund are literally things we couldn't do by ourselves. We would this is the idea, is seed money, this is matching money, this is the kind of help that entities need to get. Look, we just did that for Newfield, right? For $75,000, bought us an investment by a private company. So that's completely in our wheelhouse. That's the thing we can do best. We do have, and we've barely whispered to anybody that we're thinking about this, and yet we've gotten some really terrific ideas in the door. And as I said, we haven't even looked yet. Things that would actually make a difference in people's lives. And I, as far as where our, financial situation stands, let me remind us of a couple things. We were convinced that paying $15 million cash for capital was going to give us annual savings down 10 or 20 years, depending upon what period of bonding we were avoiding. I've been asking and I haven't gotten yet, but I think it's north of $1 million. We've had an estimate of north of $1 million annual savings because of using cash for capital from ARPA. Our casino revenue is already, I think it's 300,000 or more over our total budget for the year. So the next 2 quarters are additional gravy, whatever comes in there. I would point out the document Rick sent out today, the status of the general fund balance. I found my budget, same budget page from last year's book. That number of after the 2021 allocations. In other words, you take the starting end of year fund balance and then you subtract the things that you're going to have, you foresee that you're going to have to pay for it out of that. That number after the 2020-2021 applications was 34.2 million. That was like what actually was available. It was free, unencumbered, 34.2. The same number in Rick's document now is 39.5. So our working new unassigned fund balance appears to be 5.3 million more than a year ago. We have built in so many places where we have security, where we have available resources. And yet our nonprofits and our community partners are begging for help. And we can give, I'm sorry, Deborah, is there some problem? I feel like we can give the seed money, the parcel support that enables these other projects to get off the ground. I think now is the time to do it. The community needs these things, and we haven't even scratched the surface. I support this proposal. I really appreciate the flexibility that's built in. If we don't get $7 million worth of good grants, we don't spend that. If we get more, we could vote to move more up. There's a lot of flexibility in here. There's a lot of safety in that flexibility. And I think there's more than enough room for the legislature to take the step.
Thank you. Leslie.
I'm going to let Mike go.
Mike Sigler.
So just to address a couple of things that people have said, I don't know if I'll convince anybody at this point, but we'll see. I understand Mike with his $5 million. I mean, that was certainly talked about. Rich is for a lower number as well. But we had a lot of people that were for our higher number. This was really a half a loaf approach, So I get where you're coming from. I get where the higher numbers are coming from. And we have people that would spend exponentially more. If Julie Kiefer was here, there would be another vote too. But so this really that's the approach we took. And that's how it came out of committee. Something else you said about taxpayers. Listen, we're sitting on a lot of money. I'm having trouble justifying hanging on to that much money, to be honest with you. If we're sitting on that much money, it basically means we're holding taxpayer money. Our promise to those taxpayer money, in my mind, is not that we're going to take that money and cut their taxes per se. We're collecting their money because we're saying, yes, we're going to spend it on the things that are going to make your lives better. And I'm looking at this going, well, we're not doing that. And that's what concerns me. I mean, I hear what Deborah said. I mean, total of what she just added up, and the total may be higher, but I'm not going to quibble about numbers, but it was like, you know, $2.5 million. Let's say it was $5 million, right? We were able to adjust for that because we're a well-balanced county. We're pretty fiscally sound. And, you know, listen, I can be glib at times, but I don't want people to think that we're not serious, right? And I think that's kind of like the danger zone we're in right now, because that's why we set an actual number. That's why 7 million sounded pretty decent, because listen, I do marketing for a living, other people do. I wanted to send a message to people in the community that we're serious about this, that listen, we got $19 million from the federal government, and there's no wiping that away. That, yeah, people are worried that it disappeared into the county hole, and now where is it? Well, it went into our budget. Well, that's great. That's not what the money was sold as. So we're fighting against the federal government's marketing that, listen, we're sending this money down to help people. And we're 18 months in now. I mean, frankly, Cayuga Medical, they spent millions out of pocket on testing and haven't, I don't think, got all of it back. They've probably gotten a good chunk back from the federal government, but they weren't assured of that when they were doling it out. I mean, you talk to Marty, I was said, how much you in? He's like, and they didn't know that the federal government would come back and reimburse them. But yeah, pandemic, people are going to die. They stepped up. This is kind of like our time to step up, you know? Thankfully, we don't have to do it out of our own budget, but the feds have come through with this money. I believe that was a promise. That was what I was led to believe when we kind of made the handshake deal. Listen, I could go, I guess, for a lower number, Mike, but I thought 7 million, that's a serious number. And then, you know what, you're right, the 5 million and then the 3 million, that'll be left for years to come by. I mean, obviously, if an asteroid hits us, then yeah, the 5 million is probably off the table. We're gonna have to dump more money into getting rid of that. But so that's how we kind of came to it. And I don't want people thinking that, you know, 7 million, which just came out of nowhere. No, it actually came from weighing the different numbers that were floating around and saying, you know what, 7, 5, 3, that has a good ring to it. It gets us to the number that we want to be at, I think, at the end, because we kind of came up with a consensus of 15. Some people will say, no, that was the consensus. Listen, like I said, I talk to people and they're wondering why we're sitting on like tens of millions of dollars, and it's their tax money. They know it. And if we're not going to spend it on the community and to make the community better, they want the money back. So that's where we're at. That's where I'm at anyway. So
Mike, are you making an amendment to Henry's proposal for $7 million?
No, I think I like Henry's proposal. I'm good.
I'm just asking.
I thought it is
Pardon?
his proposal is 7 million.
Henry's proposal is $15 million.
Well, 753.
It's 15 million, it's not 7, it's $15 million.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So folks, we're going to start losing people. I'm trying to get us to a place. So if what you have to say isn't going to convince anybody to change their minds, can you just hold it and let's vote on the proposal that's on the table? And if that doesn't pass, if we get another proposal, or at least keep your comments really brief, I'd really appreciate that. So let's go down the line. I have Mike Lane, I have Deb Dawson.
I'm ready to do the amendment. I'd like to amend the proposal on the table to not 15 million, but 5 million for 1 year.
5
I
million
will
for 1 year
second
to
that.
amendment, seconded by Deborah Dawson. Discussion on the amendment. If you said something about it, you've given your reasoning before, you don't have to repeat it. Discussion on the amendment. Deborah.
Yeah, 5 million is what we can afford. We have a little under 40. If we take 18% of our operating budget, that's a little under 35 for fund balance, and that leaves us 5. Honestly, Mike Sigler, I don't understand how we can present a serious commitment to our community if we say, well, okay, we'll allocate $15 million that we don't necessarily have now. And then if things change later, the next legislature can just take it away. I would much rather say, here's $5 million. We assure you that we will spend that this year, and we will revisit the issue next year. And finally, I'd just like to defend myself. Henry Granison, I know the difference between investing in the community and throwing money away. What I said was, if we give money out too quickly and we end up back in lockdown, we might as well have thrown money away. So thank you.
All righty. Shauna.
Yeah, I think my my thought is that I am comfortable committing for 1 year. I will support Mike's amendment for 5 million. I would even go up to 7 million. I will not make an amendment on his amendment. But I mean, at this point, we don't know what the future holds, and that's why I am scared to commit more funds in the upcoming years. And really draw that out. I agree with Deborah. We can't just say that we're going to do the 753 and then pull back. That puts all of us in a really, really horrible bind, especially if the economy drops tomorrow and we just don't know where we're going with all of this. So I will support your amendment, Mike.
Dave, I saw your hand earlier. Did you have something to say?
That's me.
Dave?
No.
Okay. Martha, let's see, you have the last word on this, and then we're voting on the amendment.
So we were asked to wait until we had the budget to consider this, and last night we got the budget. And I know you worked on the capital program, Lisa. Do you have a sense now of what the savings will be out of cash for capital? Because you've identified which capital projects, without even knowing that the federal government is going to do an infrastructure bill or 2 bills, but you've identified cash for capital. How what's the annual savings going to be?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I don't know that it's necessarily a straightforward calculation, because as I said in the several PowerPoint presentations about the use of ARPA funds and the cash for capital, there are multiple variables that go into creating the capital plan in terms of the amount of money that you're putting forward, the timing of projects, what projects go to bond, et cetera. So, and how much we determined to put toward the capital program. So I can go back and try to provide you with some funding or some estimates, but the funding that we paid cash for capital, we did not have that capacity prior to the ARPA funds. And those projects either wouldn't get completed or we would need to bond for them, which would affect the levy.
Right. Well, what I'm asking is, because I think none of them are invented new projects. They may be moved up from like the public safety building from some years ahead. But so let's say, I guess the question is, if you were borrowing for those projects, and those were, I think they're mostly 20-year projects, 20-year bonds, what would the borrowing come out to be? I think that's knowable. And I understand there's a lot of other moving parts, but you presented us a list, and I guess I would hope we can get that number. That'd be very helpful.
So I'm hearing that Lisa doesn't have that number right now.
Okay.
All right, Leslie, Mike Sigler, and then let's vote, please.
I just want to say once more to folks, I appreciate that folks that may not have been eager to commit any money are thinking about this seriously, and I do appreciate that, and I recognize where folks are coming from when thinking about long-term, about understanding where we are next year or in 5 years, and we won't, and we can't. I would urge us to think about our level of comfort with making a meaningful commitment to our community and recognizing that the money that came our way was unexpected. And I think that we are doing a great job bringing it in and taking care of some of the needs in the county government. I want to make sure that we're doing the same on the community side.
Thank you. Mike Sigler, absolute last word.
Yep, I would just ask that maybe the mover consider making this 7 million instead of 5 million, just for the simple fact that you're basically giving the people who want higher, like no loaf. And I just want to give like half a loaf, I don't know. So just something to consider.
That's not friendly.
Fair enough.
Somebody want to amend the amendment, $7 million? Is the chair allowed to do that? I never know.
Yes, you can move.
So I'd like to move to amend Mike's amendment to $7 million invested in this recovery fund, Tompkins County Government Recovery Fund.
Can I ask a question about it? Is that to be spent or at least designated by the end of this year?
I'm not designating anything, just what the committee said, it's just a tranche for, and it's just
Well,
there.
the committee's report does say something about the first tranche to be allocated or committed by the end of 2021. If that's it says first round solicitation launch late 2021.
A launch is late 2021. I didn't say it has to be spent
Okay,
by then.
Is there,
And they said they didn't have any, they just had rounds, not years. And so I'm just leaving it at that. All I wanted
I
was
would
$7 million
second that
instead of
amendment.
5.
I'll
I have a
that.
second to the amendment by Amanda. Thank you.
Point of
Further
clar-
discussion on the amendment?
Clarification. So is it it's a one-time, you're not proposing a multi-year, just?
I'm not
one-time?
proposing multi-year. I'm just saying $7 million of rounds.
Thank you. And I have wondering if you would consider saying up to 7 million.
Up to $7 million.
That's friendly to the seconder.
Ready to the seconder. Let's vote. Did you have a question, Martha?
but with really, all due respect, I ask that we try to get this money out the door.
And that's what we're trying to do with $7 million. Otherwise, we wouldn't go anywhere. So let me take this to a vote. Go ahead.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
No.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
No.
Dave McKenna,
yes,
Glenn Maury,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Leslie Show,
Yes,
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
No.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Leslie McBean Claiborne,
Yes.
11 noes.
So that becomes the main motion right now.
That becomes the amendment.
Oh, that was the amendment. We just voted on the amendment. So that becomes the amendment.
Right.
To the main motion. So now we have to vote on it for it to become the main motion?
Point of
What is the
order?
main motion?
Yeah. Point of order, that was the motion. Henry's motion was 753, and we just amended the motion.
Now, Henry's motion was $15 million
And then Mike
over
moved
3
5.
years with these
Right.
rounds. Mike Lane amended that to just $5 million. I amended the amendment to $7 million. So we just voted on the amendment to the amendment. So now we have to vote on, this is a new amendment to Henry's main motion. So now we have to vote on that,
I thought we just
right?
did.
Sorry,
Sorry, confusing me.
I have that right. I know I do, so let's vote.
So what are we voting?
We're voting on $7 million committed to the recovery fund of Tompkins County in this round of funding.
That's for 1 year.
For 1 year,
Just for 1 year,
just for 1 year.
not any further.
And it's up to.
I'm not asking for anything further. I'm just asking for us to get some money out the door for this first year so we can get monies out to folks. And the next group of people can be voting on further monies. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Let's vote.
It's up to 7 million.
Up to $7 million.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
No.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
I know you love me, Mike.
I'll vote yes.
Thank you.
Dave McKenna,
Yes.
Glenn Maury,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Leslie Show,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Granison,
Yes.
Leslyn McBean Claiborne,
Yes.
with 13 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you. Rich?
I just wanted to apologize to my colleagues. I have a prior commitment that is standing before we scheduled this special meeting. I thought we would have wrapped this up in half an hour. But here we are. I wish you all good.
What were you thinking?
Rich, we want to get you just for the main motion. Can we vote on the main motion before we lose?
Right, yeah.
We lose Rich, which is.
What's the main motion?
Which voted on is now the main motion. I don't know.
No.
What is it?
No, we already did that.
No,
No, we voted on the amendment to Henry's. Now we have to vote on the main motion, which is the $7 million still, up to $7 million 1 year. That is now the main motion.
Yes, please. Okay.
We just voted on that.
We just voted on that.
It's a process thing.
Amendment.
Amendment became the main motion. then.
Then this vote will go fast, right? Because we've already practiced.
Yes.
I'm not voting on something I don't know what it is.
Cassie, what do we do?
we had Henry's motion that was amended,
Twice.
and then Leslin amended that was voted on.
That became the new amendment.
Right.
We voted on the amendment.
And then
which
we
is now the
voted
main
again.
motion.
I think, let's just vote one more time and then I'll
Yes.
look at it tomorrow. But I
So-
think one more vote.
On vote, which is the main motion of up to $7 million 1 year into the Tompkins County Recovery Fund.
Okay.
For it.
Rich John,
Yes.
Dan Klein,
No.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Dave McKenna,
Yes.
Glenn Maury,
Yes.
Martha Robertson,
Yes.
Leslie Show,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Granison,
Yes.
Leslyn McBean Claiborne,
Yes.
13 ayes, 1 no.
Thank you very much. That carries. Before everybody else leaves, hold on. Go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, looking back at the proposal, is there anything else? Does staff need any other direction? Are we good here?
I think we're good. We've heard from our community sort of what are priorities and, depending on what, so $7 million, saying to folks, Lisa, and collecting proposals for doing. Yes, Annie?
You didn't need us to have a vote on accepting the whole report, or did we just do
We
that?
don't need a vote on accepting the whole
We
report.
don't need that. Okay.
But thank you.
You sure?
Anything
Because
else?
I have a couple more votes in me.
May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Leslie, seconded by Dan Klein. Everyone in favor of adjourning? Thank you all for your really hard work on this.